smiling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it's sink or swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together, this is big things. Doing big things, we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, putting me in charge. I'm a general, from the front, I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode here on the Shrimp Tank, powered by Celsius Beverage. We now have over 350 episodes up on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com. So, of course, check the past episodes and reach out to our guests. If it's on Instagram, if it's on LinkedIn or Owl, right? Where can you get access to this many amazing entrepreneurs locally from South Florida? So every week we get to interview the best and brightest entrepreneurs from South Florida. So, Kevin, without further ado, do us the honors talking about today's guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, welcome to the show today, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. One of the things we try to instill in our students is the ability to give a quick and dynamic elevator pitch. So I want you to start off the show with your elevator pitch.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Jason. Mike Liebelson, you may know I'm running for mayor, MikeForBoca.com, but that's not who I am. I'm a very successful businessman, entrepreneur. My career has been a pinball machine, and we're going to talk more about that. There was no planning in my career, but I turned out to be fairly successful and ranged all the way from building a very successful, founding and building very successful independent power company, working hands-on in refineries, doing venture investment in various types of companies, alternative protein, as well as energy companies as well. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from UC Berkeley. I've got an MBA in Finance from Wharton, and I think the elevator just went to ground. So
yeah, I was going to say,
it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down.
Yeah, that building was getting pretty tall, but nice job. Well, welcome to the Shrimp Tank, Mike. Why don't you start early days? How did you start off your career? That's a fairly impressive academic background.
Well, again, let's talk about the pinball machine. So chemical engineering, UC Berkeley. How did I get into that? Well, like most at that time, good young Jewish boys, I wanted to be a doctor. And I'd never taken organic chemistry. And I went 2 quarters of organic chemistry and I got a B. And back then, if you didn't get an A in organic, you were not going to be a doctor. And I said, okay, what else can I major in? And it was chemical engineering. So that's how I got into it. It was really fun. The biggest takeaway for me was the ability I had as a co-op student to work hands-on in refineries as a mechanic, as an operator, not as an engineer, because that gave me the connection with all kinds of people, not just the higher level people.
Let's go back the year you graduated college. Looking at your career now, you said a pinball machine. We have 40 students sitting in the audience today. What would you say? What would you have focused on back then, that first year? Right? So many entrepreneurs fail. And they have learning lessons, and they're like, oh, what I should have been doing is building relationships. What I should have been doing is working for a big brand to learn from them and make my mistakes there before I go out on my own, for an example. So if you could go back in their shoes, what would you advise them to do their first year out of college?
First year in college.
Out of college. They graduate. A lot of people are seniors in this room. They're all taking this entrepreneurship class as an example.
Most of them are going to pass it too.
So yeah, Kevin's their professor.
They will graduate at some point, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it is.
Not one I anticipated. I think the world has changed, as you all know.
Yeah.
There's been a big pivot. There's something in my vernacular. Again, I don't want to insult anybody here. But in my vernacular, I use the term screen people. So people who think that by looking at their computer, looking at their screen, that they are going to create value. Now, there was a period of time where that was true. It certainly was true when I graduated out of Wharton and out of business school, because who could do the best PowerPoint presentation? Who could be the best Excel sheet jockey? And then you started out at some kind of low level in some consulting firm or investment bank, and that was the value to you. But you're a screen person. As you all know, with AI, that's going away. The value of being a screen person is going to go down and down and down. So what's not going to change with AI, and what is going to continue to be valuable? And what that is going to be is in-person, personal interactions, learning how to sell, learning how to connect with people, how to develop your product and then get it to market. But let's not talk about development. Let's just talk about that in-person interaction. I was a nerd growing up. My wife, who's here, would say I'm still a nerd. But what I learned was on-the-job training, a company called Air Products and Chemicals, where I thought I was a brainiac, and I developed some great way to capture carbon dioxide out of fluidized bed cat cracking plants. And what I did was I went and visited about 100 refineries in the United States and tried to sell that concept, sell that product. And I started out, I didn't connect with people, but I learned how to sell. So even if you now are an introverted type of person, you haven't gone out in the world and connected with folks one-on-one, I would say that's the skill that you have to develop with the new AI world that we're up against.
I really like that because it's all about relationships, and relationships aren't going away, right? As technology changes, how important it is to be able to pick up a phone and be able to call someone and they'll actually answer, right? These days, everything goes to a text message, but even text messages being responded to. And maybe you are an introvert and you don't like going to networking events. Like everyone says, go to networking events right after college, meet people. Maybe that's not for you, but like think about sports like pickleball, right? Like you could just say, okay, I like pickleball, but naturally you get to meet so many characters through pickleball. And before you know it, those relationships turn into business partners and give you guidance along the way, right? Kevin's pickleball.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, that's a great answer. A lot of stuff has changed. I mean, I'm using AI to do all sorts of stuff. So I like that term, screen people. I haven't heard that one before. But at the same time, not everything has changed. Those relationships remain important. And fun fact, you'll appreciate, Mike, organic chemistry still used to kind of screen people out of medicine even today. So that is still a class at the university that that not everybody is made for. So fast forward a little bit. Tell us about, what happened at those companies, how those things played out, and a little bit more about your entrepreneurial career.
Yeah. So look, I've worked a lot of different places, but let's just start with where I was very successful monetarily and elsewise. I co-founded a company called LS Power Corporation. I'm the L in LS. And what LS Power did and does is it built utility scale generation plants around the country, lower cost power than the utilities could do. But we did that at a time, and maybe this is another message for you. When we did it, nobody had heard of an independent power company doing this. Nobody was financing those plants. So we had to create and develop contractual structures to enable what's called today project finance, because we had no money, right? My partner, we raised $1 million from a guy and $1 million from JP Morgan Chase. It was their first venture investment. That $1 million JP Morgan Chase put into our company paid off as $276 million over 12 years. And when we got into it, we were having to create the market, create the business, create the ability to do project finance. So always keep, if you've got an idea and a concept, you work really hard, you can do the creation on your own. I guess that's the message.
So many of the students in here are familiar with that concept of having no money. That's something that I believe resonates with them. I know it did with me when I was in college. So that'll happen.
In debt, not even no money. Reverse, right? Lots of people have big college loans to pay off, and You know, they take a lot of courses and they have to work their way through paying off the debt, but also, you know, expenses of living down here in South Florida. Talk about those 12 years for a moment. You know, what was the hardest thing running that business through that 12-year period? And did you go public, for example? Like, kind of give us stages. When you say 276 million, I have a feeling a lot happened there.
Yeah. So I actually ran, LS Power was a deal business. So we didn't have many employees. We had like 12 to start. And I ran it out of, believe it or not, Montana before anybody knew Montana existed. It was outside of Bozeman, Montana before anybody knew what Bozeman was. But I liked it there because I was mountain biking, I was skiing, I was, you know, hunting in like my very little spare time that I had. And we had to go through 50 projects, 50 deals we thought were almost going to close before we found the 2 that closed. And I remember we were just getting to the last one. I said, geez, if this doesn't work, there's no way I've got a job here and I'm going to have to move my family. And that was the biggest risk. I was a little panicky. You know, you got to control your emotions, right? Because you're at that thing, you got no money, you know, you've already had 50 rejections and you get very panicky. Like, what am I going to do next? And you got to stay calm through that thing. I guess I learned it's a lot calmer when you got the money in the bank. We didn't have the money in the bank back then.
And it's common with entrepreneurs, right? And I have a quote up on my wall, the shrimp tank wall. First shrimp tank was at my local office here in Boca Raton, and someone wrote on the wall, it only takes one yes, right? Because so often we get 100 no's, and often you could be so close to failure, but that one yes comes in and changes the whole trajectory of the brand. Now, fast forward to like the 12th year. Tell us about the exit, and where was the company privately held? Was it publicly held, for example? But towards the exit side of that, kind of tell us what took place.
Yeah, I'll tell you the biggest mistake I made in my life too.
Sure.
But without the mistake, I wouldn't have met my wife. So we'll talk about that. But basically, look, we had a different model. Okay, then I know you guys are in the tech world and all this kind of thing, and you know, apps and products and TikTok and so forth. But we were building hard assets. So our model was we would develop, and develop means we would put in place gas contracts, power purchase agreements, get our permits in place, get our transmission lines in place, get our EPC construction contracts in place, all with different credit-worthy people because we didn't have any money. And then we had that package of contracts. We could go out and get investment grade bonds and equity to finance those projects. And the time to monetize them, believe it or not, was not when they went into operation, right? So it might take us 2 years to develop this thing, and then it would start construction, and then it might be a 3 or 4 year construction period. But the time where it was really valuable was at the start of construction. So what we did is we assembled a bunch of these projects that we had in areas of the country, and they're all in start construction or a little ways in, and then we sold them. We brought a bunch of money in. First, we sold them to a company called Cogentrix, and then we started again, and we built them all up again, and we sold them to a company called NRG Energy. So those were our exits, right? And the exits were not selling companies, it was selling assets. And to be honest, we made so much money back then, and I was in Montana, I didn't spend much money, and I was getting bored and, you know, went to do some other things. I actually went into being a CEO of a biotech company to do stabilized biopeptides. But I went to my partner, I said, I got enough. I'm going to step back from this business. You keep going. Well, lo and behold, my partner and his family in LS Power is really worth a lot more money that I would ever have imagined. And if I had stayed in it, you know, as 50-50 partner, I would still be there. But then I wouldn't be having as much fun. And, you know, I wouldn't, again, have met my wife.
Well, I think that's great. And I think it's pretty rare. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs, obviously doing the show, if nothing else, but also in the community and elsewhere who, you know, look back on their career and have kind of the opposite. You know, they wish they may end up with more money than they need, but, you know, they missed out on a lot of things along the way because they stayed really on that grind, to getting to the next level. And then it was like, well, let's go to the next level and the next level, when, you know, initially they had planned to get to just really that initial level and change their mind, and they keep going. So good for you. I wanted to ask you about after that. You mentioned you got into a little bit of venture investing. That's always a fun space. Fun fact, just yesterday I was at the Florida Venture Forum Venture Capital Conference down at Coral Gables, which brings together all the different investors from across Florida. Great event. It was packed. So VCs, angels. What type of stuff did you invest in?
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you a bit of a segue here, which was, you know, after this thing, and I made all this money. I took like 5 or 6 years off, and you know, my wife said, you know, you got to go back to work. So I actually worked for 2 big corporations in the C-suite, a company, Energy in the energy field, and then Foster Wheeler Corporation was a big engineer construction company. We're in Geneva, Switzerland. And boy, if you're an entrepreneur and you do not like control from the top, you do not want to work in a big public company. That didn't work so well with my personality. I'm just too much of a rebel to deal with that, and that's what happened with me. Now, in terms of venture investing, I have a different way of doing it. This whole thing with funds and fund fees, we can talk about that. It's just a big ripoff, right? I would not recommend investing in a venture fund. I wouldn't even recommend investing in a private equity fund. There's just too much fees, too much ripoff. You don't know what's going on. My method of venture investing is start out with young entrepreneurs. And I can give you a couple examples. I did that with, you know, we can see if we want to expand it to that. And I totally learned that business, and I might participate in there with them. I might be a manager or, you know, CEO or you know, on the board. I don't like board seats. So, but I'm in there working with them. And then when I really know the business, then I invest, but then I invest alongside the institutional capital that's doing institutional due diligence. And since I'm on the inside, I really know that the people that are running this thing are people I trust, and I can go along with them. So I've got a couple of examples of that. I made one big mistake, and the reason I wait for that institutional round is I pumped a lot of money into this, you know, biotech, you know, stabilized biopeptide company, you know, with a guy who is just a great salesman. And in Florida, be careful, there are a lot of great salesmen.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of great salesmen. Look at the people who are executing, not the salesman. I made that mistake once, and I'll never make it again. So that's how I do my venture investing.
Good. Well, that answers my next question, because there's always one of those when you get into venture, no matter how you slice it. But that's a smart approach. It's kind of like a follow-on funder, letting the primary or lead investor go through all the due diligence, the data room, the documents, and verifying the things you think you're pretty sure about that you've seen hands-on. So that's an interesting approach. I know a couple of people who do it that way, and it seems like it tends to work out pretty well comparatively, rather than the spray and pray approach, which is they just kind of invest in a lot of different things and hope a few of them works out. And you know, some funds get away with that, though. It's not that efficient from a capital perspective. And you're absolutely right about those fees. They can be problematic.
Yeah, but that spray and pray, I think, is a ridiculous model, because these guys don't even know what they're investing in.
Yeah.
It worked in the tech space because, you know, the overall wave of the tech space was so huge.
Yep.
But when they tried to do it, Kleiner Perkins, I spent a lot of time with in the energy space, and they did that same spray and pray approach. It's a big failure.
Yeah, well, they're distinctive, and those things can't scale the same way that tech can, because of the nature of software and cloud-based and a global market immediately, right? The World Wide Web, that's why they call it that. And like, if you have to build things and make things, you can't really scale that fast.
Right.
Okay, Mike, let's talk about this billboard behind me and this postcard.
Yeah,
Mike,
I mean,
Mike for mayor. So
yeah, so
you don't need to do this. So tell us why we're going down this route, of course.
Yeah, let me add
Where's your
in
wife?
there. I mean, you've got it made, right? You tried the corporate, you're a successful entrepreneur, made some investments, so you're successful, you're retired, you're living the deep dream down in Boca. Why get into this? Tell us.
Yeah. So I was asked to this as a condo meet the mic thing, and he said, guy said, I'm a psychologist. Like, why are you doing this? And I said, okay, well, you got to get into my psychology a little bit. And fortunately or unfortunately, when I see people being wronged, and or the people being wronged and taken advantage of, and if I have the ability to step in and fix it and work for them, I do it. It may be not smart, from a career perspective, whatever. At this point, it doesn't matter, for me from a career. And that's why I'm here for mayor. I mean, basically, we've had a city council. You guys would probably be amazed. There's probably $1 million of big developer money from Miami and West Palm Beach that has put into the campaign coffers of our city council here. And they work for the big developers. They are not working for the people. I know that sounds harsh, but I've sat in every city council hearing since early September, and they're excruciating. They're 6 hours sometimes at a time. But that's what they're doing. They're spending 80-90% of their time on approving exceptions, variances, build taller buildings, cut down the banyan trees on one of these things. Do whatever you want, whatever it takes to approve all this excess development without having the infrastructure first, right? We're not I'm a business person. I'm not anti-development, right? But you got to have the infrastructure first.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't we kind of need more housing?
We need more housing. We need lower cost housing. We need better student housing, but we have to have the infrastructure to handle it, right? So if you approve all this without getting the roads and the water and sewer and stuff in first, and making sure that's there, and negotiating, essentially is your city council and your city government negotiating on behalf of the people, or are they rolling over and giving the developer what they want? So that's what we're talking about here.
Interesting. And I'm sure the students are glad to hear you say student housing. That has been a constant challenge around the university.
Yeah, I mean, I get lots of calls. My most interesting call was really from one of you FAU students, and she said, "Hey, for me to live, I've got to live all the way out in Boca West or something, but I've got a job on campus, and there's only one bus a day, and so for me to take that bus, I miss my job, or I got to take it later. It was a big mess for her. I do not understand why we don't solve that issue, right? For kids, for FAU kids. FAU is a big component of quality of life for the city of Boca, both in terms of cultural education, everything that FAU is.
Yeah.
But it's also impacts what, we hear, which is the traffic issues, the quality of life issues and so forth. I think there's a fix the city working together with FAU on this stuff.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Talk from the perspective of being an entrepreneur and now just the political world. What's been the hardest thing to overcome so far?
Oh yeah, well that's and we talk about that a lot. I mean, I'm used in my business world, like if someone talks to you, I'm not talking about salespeople. I'm talking about my business associates. They talk to you. You can trust what they say. They're you have a faith of what they say. This political world, it's two-faced, right? You can't trust anybody. I've never seen anything like it. It's vicious. I guess it's people that have learned to be this Machiavellian way about them, and it's just not my nature. But to me, it's just something you learn, and you got to roll with it.
Are you allowed to tell us the most vicious story that has occurred to you so far, or just kind of curious? Like, we see people really stab people in the back in business, and then of course in politics. So if you can share an example without going too detailed, if you're allowed to say.
Yeah, I'll tell two examples. I'm not going to name names, but
Sure.
There's one guy who's, I'm a Republican. There's a guy who's Republican, guy here, and the Republican rules are, hey, if you've got Republican candidate, you got another Republican candidate, you can't like pick and choose between them. And we have a nice conversation, all this, and then on social media, he's just viciously tearing into my wife, and then he's viciously tearing into me. So like, what's that all about? You can talk to him, but that's who he is. Another one, you know, again, young kid, probably in his 20s. You know, we're talking, he's my campaign advisor. He's telling me what I should be doing and all this and all this. And, you know, I'm giving him information. He's giving me information. And all along, he's working for Andy Thompson, who I'm running against.
Wow.
You know, that's what it is. And now what we got, the other vicious things
That's
I got
nuts.
now. Okay, look, I don't mean to keep talking.
No, it's a great.
Okay, so the
It's
way
important for everyone to know, because so often, like,
go
you know,
ahead.
you're an entrepreneur and then you switch over and you think it's, oh, entrepreneurship can be ruthless, right? And difficult in hard times, but this is next level when people are going after your spouse and you're like, you think there's a line in the sand that people do not cross when it comes to family, but they cross right on over it, and they stir it up, of course. So
Oh, they do.
it's
They
important to
do.
know.
Yeah. And just like what we're dealing with now is, I don't know if you know how these campaigns are financed. You think that we have campaign finance limits. There's two things. There's your campaign. You know, people can give up to $1,000 a person. That's a lot of money, but
Yeah.
you know, this is a big campaign. And that gets reported, even now, it's get reported every week. But then there's something called a political committee, a PAC. Okay. These PACs are funded by all the big developers. And there are PACs on PACs on PACs. So my opponents have a PAC. One particular opponent has a PAC. And the guy who runs that PAC runs another PAC, you know, which has got huge contributions from developers, that has another PAC that has huge contributions from developers. And I get all these attack flyers, and they're from another thing called a 501c4, which is run by that same guy. And, you know, when I put something out, it's got my name on it. I'm used to taking responsibility for myself in
Sure.
business. This just has that PAC on it. So we have to deal with that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. But
Well,
you know, I'm a pretty clean guy, so they don't have much to go after me on. So that
Sure.
they try to find things. Yeah.
well, that's good news. Well, I know the students have some
Yeah.
questions for you,
Let's bring
Mike.
them
You
on
ready
up.
to take some
Yeah.
questions from the audience? Oh, and even a very special guest has got a question.
So this is gonna be
Okay.
a good one. To his wife. Mike, thank you for coming. My name is Douglas Muir.
Hi, Douglas.
What we do in this class is in entrepreneurship is we have them interview potential people who will buy their services or product. So I want to tell you, you can interview me right now because I moved my hedge fund from 40 Wall Street down here in April 2020. And it's the best move I've ever made. By far, best move. Not just taxes, but just, you know, it's the best move I've ever made. And why do I love it down here so much? And it's the main reason is because this is a town. It's not a city. So let's just make that very clear. And we want to keep it a town. And so my question to you is, you've heard about, and you spoke eloquently about this. And if you hit this right, I will make my commitment right now that I will give him $1,000 because
Never
your
seen this in the
opponents
shrimp
did not hit this right.
I just want shrimp.
I'll throw in the basket of shrimp.
Dr. Cox lets me sit in his class and kind of help him out for a little bit. But my question to you is, sir, have you seen these signs around?
Oh yeah, of course.
And I have to agree with you on the infrastructure. And like you look at some of these people and you're just like, are you kidding? I'm an entrepreneur. Like, how do you not see this? Do we need more housing in East Boca? No, we don't need more housing in East Boca. We got plenty 2 miles away, 3 miles away in West Boca. And right now I have to say hi, Jenny. She's in Istanbul, my fiance. She's in Istanbul watching, and she gave me like 9 million questions to ask you, and I will not. But we'd like to know before we vote, and we're both Republicans. What are your thoughts on this growth, this green sign?
Oh, okay. So look, I'm 100% with Save Boca. You know, I've signed all the petitions.
You hit that one right.
Okay, let me explain to you what Save Boca is.
Yeah.
It's a simple concept. Save Boca was put in place with 10,000 signatures, 12,000 signatures.
And I was one
of
of the
people here.
signatures too. It's this over here. Have you seen these around town?
Okay, the simple thing about Save Boca was, if the city is going to sell or lease public land, it should go back to the voters for a vote. That's all that
Yep.
Save Boca started out to be. It actually got that particular charter amendment initiative on the ballot in January. There was a lawsuit. It was pulled back. They found a friendlier judge who actually knocked it off the ballot. Can you believe that? A judge said 10,000, 12,000 people are wrong. I'm going to take this off the ballot. So that just tells you that this developer controlled, I better not say anything about judges. So I'm going to stop right there. But that's all it was. Now, Save Boca actually now has a bigger meeting in the city of Boca Raton. It is a brand, and it is a brand that fits with people's overall kind of uncertainty about the shifting ground around all this overdevelopment, uncontrolled overdevelopment, traffic, tremendous changes to quality of life that have existed, that have happened here in the city in the last 3 years. So that's what Save Boca means now as a brand, and I'm 100% with the brand. They don't endorse a mayoral candidate. They just think it's just too political.
Yeah.
But that's what that is.
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to get your information to make that donation in person to you.
Say that
Thank
on
you
the
so
mic.
much.
Say that into the mic so the audience could hear.
So I made a promise of answering the question right, and Mike answered the question right, and he's with Save Boca, and I'm going to donate $1,000 to his campaign. And better yet, I'll vote for you. I'm a
Thank
big
you so
voter.
much. And anybody else, MikeForBoca.com. There's a donate button. That's the easiest
Sure.
way to do it.
All right, let's
Yeah.
get to some actual
We'll give you-
student
Give
questions.
you a real buzzer. There you go. There you go, buzz. Okay, students, come on up.
Hi, my name is Ian. Hi.
Ian,
Ian, yes.
Yeah.
My first question would be, what would be your top priority in your first year as mayor if you were to be elected?
this city has to have its ship turned around. So the first top priority is completely change the agenda, which right now is 8 meetings a month, 4 deputy city managers making $300,000 plus, all geared towards an agenda, which is approving development stuff. So what we're going to do first is we are going to prioritize the people, and we are going to put lists of things that are most important for people, and that's what we're going to talk about. Now, in terms of my own personal view, is we need to bring in the best urban planners in the country. And look, I am against consultants and spending years consulting, so we'll give them 3 months, and maybe we'll just start with downtown. Come up with a plan, work with people, not just these few people that show up at hearings. We somehow have to branch out, bring in people, work with people, come up with a plan. And this is a message for everybody. Plans and talking and studies, this is what this council does and a lot of government does. It's all about action, right? The plan has to be reduced to actions. This is a strong city manager government, even though you would think it's a strong mayor government right now. And you've got to say, city manager, these are your priorities. Implement these actions that came out of this urban plan that we've just created. And you have this much time for each action. And you have key performance indicators, and you got to do it. So to me, we've got to get our hands around what do we want Boca to be first. Right now, it's just it's just these ad hoc things that are happening.
Okay, thank you. My second question would be, is there anything that stands out from you from other candidates?
I take $0 from developers. My main candidate competitor, Andy Thompson, is taking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars from developers. And a lot of those developers, or most of them, are actually from outside of Boca. So because I'm not taking that, I'm not compromised. I'm going to work for the people. That's one of the biggest things.
Okay, thank you.
How's it going? My name is Kevin, and my question is, since you're running for mayor, I thought it would be pretty cool to ask you what government regulations have had the biggest impact on your energy company?
Well, I never did business on my energy company in Florida. I'm not really have an energy company, but I'm going to talk about generally government regulations. Okay, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So we have a situation in Boca where the retailers, the restaurants, small business, homeowners, rental folks, and so forth, I call it regulatory suffocation. They are continually held to these regulatory standards, that are coming out of the city book. And it makes it very difficult. You can't get a sign. Our son has a Pilates studio, a very successful Pilates studio here. I think it took him 9 months to get a sign. I got a restaurant owner, long-term restaurant owner here, and he said, I can't open my new deli because I've got an ADA requirement on the bathroom, which isn't going to be used by customers, and it's costing me like $100,000. So we've got this kind of regulatory suffocation for the little guy, but for the big developers, they don't even use inspectors from the city. They get their inspectors from Tallahassee, right? And they all come in. Now, we do have one big building that was Tallahassee inspectors that actually has got structural issues downtown. I don't want to name it, but everybody knows what it is. New building. And we've got to fix that. We got to make it easy for business to work, to do what they need to do. Time is money. We used to have a term in my business called time kills deals, TKD. It's not Taekwondo. I did Taekwondo too. TKD, time kills deals. Time kills businesses. You got to let businesses work quickly, right? You can't let government get in the way of that. There are obviously regulations, health, safety, things that are important, but I'm sorry if I went on too long, but I feel strongly about this. You can
thank
see.
you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
How you doing? My name's Justice. I'm not from Boca. I'm from Hollywood, Florida, but kind of the same concept you're talking about is really going down. I've lived there my whole life. My dad grew up there, been there his whole life. And it's kind of like an overstepping of government, especially when it comes to development and stuff like that. Like they're coming around to middle-class homes and they come and tell you, oh, well, your driveway is made of rock and we need it cemented. And this dude makes $40,000 a year. He owns his home, but now he has to put in a $30,000 concrete driveway. So my question kind of leads into what policies and safeguards are you going to put in to prevent the overpowering influence from the developmental people that are in City Hall? You don't have, obviously, I don't expect you to name me a full list, but
yeah. So again, you've got two things. You've got kind of this city, and look, we have a great city staff, so don't get me wrong, but we've got some kind of code and some kind of attention that they've got people that they can throw lots of people at things like this, like what's your driveway made out of, right? Or do you want to put a shed in your backyard? I mean, I had the woman who runs the art show downtown. She said to me, yeah, I've got this 85-year-old exhibitor and they need to park their car to be able to move their stuff over into their exhibit. And they were hassled by 3 different people, and said, no, you got to move. You got to get out of here, right? We've got that, yet we're not focusing on these huge 14-story towers that are getting built, that are knocking down banyan trees, that are creating traffic problems and all that. So we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that code, and we have to fix the orientation of the city to focus on the big stuff and not the little guy, right? That's my view.
So that kind of leads into my second question is, so I read like a little bit, I'm not super involved in politics, but I read about it. It mentioned that you didn't really have a past in politics in the local government. How do you intend to kind of overpass that, the lack of networking ability, not ability, because I'm not just discrediting your ability, but your lack of connections within the political department? Because there's people who have been here for, decades who are so tied in, they can kind of over push past things, exactly like you're saying with the donations and everything. How do you plan to kind of push past that sort of that gap?
That's thanks for asking that. That's the rookie argument. I'm a rookie.
I'm not grabbing on you, by the way. Just
I'm just telling you what I'm called. I'm a rookie. I don't have any experience, but somebody else has been here 8 years on the city council. Well, look what they've done, right? I mean, you got to look what they've done. To me, I'm going to get in trouble with, because I'm not a politician. To me, this is child's play. If you look at the organizations I stepped into, NRG Energy, Foster Wheeler, other big organizations that were in much, they were turnaround situations, right? Where the ship was going in the total wrong direction.
Yeah.
And I had to go in and lead that and create teams and so forth. And I was coming in not knowing anybody. I mean, this is simple. Okay. I mean, I got to learn some specifics, some government specifics, but to me, this is a simple task compared to what I've had in my career.
I'll
That's
bring
a
it
great
back
answer.
to the
Thank
earlier
you.
part. It's the pinball machine, right? So when you're a CEO, an entrepreneur, you put out fires quickly, and it's a people business. So it goes back to your original answer that it's all about the people. And when we interview, me and Kevin, hundreds of people on this show, the most successful people know how to handle people. And that was your original answer. So I'll go right back to that.
Thanks for
Yeah.
putting it back in terms that everybody can understand. Thank you so much, Jason.
Absolutely.
What's going on? My name is Kevin, and my question for you is more so like, say you were elected, what kind of effects would like me, just as like a regular Boca resident, kind of feel? Like, what changes would you make that like would affect me personally, as just like a normal resident? Okay,
so I mean, you have to tell me a little bit more about what you mean by a regular Boca resident. I mean, do you live in apartment? Do you live in a home? I mean, are you in West Boca, East Boca?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like right in the middle of Boca, and I mean, I'm from Boca, so my family lives here. So I kind of grew up here. I was just kind of like wondering, what things would you do that would kind of affect me personally as like a regular Boca resident that lives not in East Boca, but not really in West Boca. So kind of like, I guess you could
Do you
say.
live with your parents, or you
Yeah,
are on
I
your
live
own?
with my parents. Right
Yeah,
now.
because this also comes to like leaving the house, and then all of a sudden you can't afford Boca anymore. So I think it relates. I'm in the finance world, so
Yeah,
I see
that
this
kind
all
of-
the time, where all of a sudden the town you love you can't live in, right? Because sometimes the cost is too high. You see these
Yeah.
beautiful condos in East Boca, and you can't wait to move out. And I did this when I lived in New York, right? I was from Port Washington, New York. And then you want to move to the city, and it's so expensive. So a lot of that is happening in Boca. So it's a great question. College grads, they're living at home with mom and dad, and then all of a sudden the real world kicks in to get a job. And I think that's what your question is.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to lead
relating
to.
to how will it impact your life in
Yeah.
the next 5 years.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, affordability, how do young families move into housing that works for them and so forth. We have had in the city of Boca an 80% increase in property taxes in the last 5 years. Okay, so you'll hear my opponents say, oh, I cut taxes, I keep taxes low. They're talking about tax rate. Your property taxes are your tax rate times your appraised value. So that number has gone up by 80% in the last 5 years. How does that affect you as a young Boca resident? People who have homesteaded homes, probably like your parents, they're capped at 3% per year, their property tax going up. So that 80% isn't hitting them. Where is it going? If you have a rental, if you're renting, 20 or 30% of your rent right now is going to property tax. It's a huge number. It's getting bigger. It's gotten way bigger over the last 5 years. You may not know it. You got a rent increase. You didn't know why you had a rent increase. It's due to that property taxes. Those property taxes are driving out our small business, our services, our restaurants, our hardware stores, and everything, because they're all in triple net leases. And you wouldn't hear that from this council because they say, "Oh, we're the lowest tax rate in the state."
Yeah.
But that's not the issue. So I'm going to cut. One of two things is going to happen. There are a bunch of bills right now at the state legislature to cut property taxes. If they don't cut property taxes, I'm going to cut property taxes, so that will have a direct relation in terms of lower rental costs. If you're looking to buy a home, the problem that young families have is they're like, okay, they've been in an apartment, they got their third kid or what have you. This is people actually come up to me, but when I go to buy that home, this is somebody who is homesteaded, but all of a sudden it's, about $1 million, $1.5 million, it's $20,000 a year in property tax, right? So they can't take that on top of the mortgage rate and the insurance. So we've got to do something. We have to say, what can we do in the city to help affordability? The best thing we can do is deal with this property tax situation.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mike. Fortunately, students have to go to their next class. So can you wrap us up with, if our audience is listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my email address is mike@mikeforboca.com. I answer all my emails. My phone number, which I answer all the time, is 561-884-4952.
Thanks for joining us here on the Shrimp Tank, and everybody listening. We'll be back next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Take care.